Hi, Renee. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Melitta.
And I'm excited. We're going to help people get famous today. And I think PR is such a wonderful strategy that people can build into their marketing mix. And it can be a lot easier than a lot of people think. So I'm really interested to learn some of your top tips around how people can do that for themselves and or if it's worth doing it for themselves. But before we dive into all things media and publicity, I'd love it if you could share with the audience a little bit about how you came to be where you are today.
Oh, wow. Okay. Short story is that I started a restaurant when I was 17 years old with my sister because I thought that entrepreneurship meant that you didn't work a lot and you made a lot of money. And so I couldn't figure out if people got jobs. Well, it turns out that entrepreneurship, especially when you're first starting out, is the opposite. And especially when you're in the food industry. There is a lot. So we were working like, I don't know, 10-hour days, 12-hour days for 5, 6 days in a row. Mind you, it was seasonal. So we did it in the summertime between her, she was in college and I was in high school. And we made a lot of money. But we didn't know any different. We had like, this was back in the 90s. So we had rolls of cash underneath our bed. And this was like $10,000, $15,000 worth of cash. And we're like, oh, we paid ourselves, we paid our employees. Like, what do we do with this money? So we figured, okay, this is kind of fun. And in the process of doing that for a few years, we also learned that, hey, we can buy back our time by delegating work and actually hiring employees to do this so that we don't have to work 70, 80-hour weeks. And at the time we were hiring friends, I was hiring my mom's friends, which was really weird. Um, and I became an instant boss. And from there, I went to college, I traveled, and I did a postgraduate certificate in marketing, which I never used. I don't think there's anything that I learned in that program that I use today. And my first job, I want to say my real job, like a first post university job, was working for a company in downtown Toronto, Canada. And we trained entrepreneurs. So part of it, we had big contracts with like Bell and Scotiabank and Staples, like these big companies in Canada. And we were training the people that use their services. So you think like a bank, Staples, these are all small business owners. So we were hired to train them. In that time, I was managing their blog, interviewing entrepreneurs, helping with the events. And I just really fell in love with the industry. But at that time, that's when Twitter kind of rolled out and became like the go-to social media platform. I jumped on early. I was maybe like the first millionth user. And funny fact is it's actually where I met my husband.
No way.
And so Twitter converts. That's the joke that we have. It's a hot dating tool, guys, and it's free. But over time, I was such an avid user that I became a quote social media influencer in Toronto. And I actually won a Virgin America influencer package where I could fly anywhere in North America that Virgin America flies for free. Thought that was kind of cool. That eventually evolved into me starting like a communications company where I was advising big companies on how to leverage social media to expand their presence. That eventually led into me starting a PR agency at the time called Onboardly. We worked with funded technology companies from South Africa to San Diego. But, and I'm sure you have a lot of mothers that listen. I started that agency when I was 8 months pregnant with my first son, had the baby, and then 11 months later, had my second son. So, in the first year of starting a PR agency, I had two babies. So, call me crazy, was not done on purpose. There was no design or formula behind this. It just happened. Luckily, I had a great team, an incredible business partner, and we eventually all learned what it was like to raise kids and grow a business. And I will say, after about 7 years, and like so many stories, we can totally pick away at these stories. After 7 years, I burnt out. There were times where I was sued for wrongful dismissal. I've had my business partner just one day got up and left. Not only did she leave the company, but she divorced her husband, sold her house, and moved to another city. So, midlife crisis, maybe. I don't know. But all of a sudden now, the entire company and all the responsibility fell on me. And we were going through due diligence to sell the agency. Someone wanted to buy it. So all this stuff was happening and like my eyes are bleeding. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't even have it in me to go through the process of selling the company, knowing that on the other end of this is a 2 to 3 year earnout of which I have to do everything I'm doing, but for somebody else. And I said, no, 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 no. So at that time, my husband was in a great position with his startups. And I said, I just need to take some time off. But as an entrepreneur, time off is like a month and then you get bored. So then you start something else. I started a company called Family Academy where I coached entrepreneurial couples on how to live a more integrated life. Then I realized in that time, the women, the wives and partners, the female partners in those relationships wanted to learn how to start or grow their own business. So then I kind of sliced off into coaching female entrepreneurs. I realized I don't like coaching. I don't like coaching, but I love doing the work. I'm a creative. I did The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and this was back in the fall. But in doing those morning pages, the conscious stream of thought, I realized like, I want to get back into PR. I love being an artist in the sense of being creative, doing creative writing, coming up with strategies, really fun pitch ideas and PR campaigns. And I can't do that when I'm coaching. Like coaching, as you understand completely, the client's success is up to them. I just couldn't do that. I could not be the one that's going to sit there and hold their hands and do this. And you probably have beautiful processes within your programs where you see the success in your clients. I couldn't wait to do that. I wanted to do the work. So then Tony Robbins event, December 8th, Date with Destiny, this past year. I was jumping up and down. If you've ever been to a Tony event, you don't stop. These are 16-hour days. And I'm just like beyond myself. It's cold in there. I'm hungry. I'm hugging strangers. And I'm like, I don't want to do coaching anymore. So I decided in those moments that I'm going to jump back into PR. Literally the moment. It was like, boom, that moment. Go back to our room, check my email. I have 2 people that wanted to hire me to do PR for them. And they didn't even know that I was not doing PR anymore. And so I got back into it. Anyways, all this to say, at the time of this recording, we're almost halfway through the year. I have doubled my revenue from last year just by following the thing that I'm good at and I love to do. So now I land on what I'm doing now with We Wild Women, where I help female entrepreneurs get the media attention they deserve. And Bob's your uncle.
What an amazing story. And yeah, you said we can dig into some of these stories. I'm kind of like, which one? Where do we begin? So yeah, I've had a lot of conversations recently all about, it's so important as an entrepreneur to really focus in not just on what you're good at, but what you really love, because otherwise, as you demonstrated, you burn out. And sometimes it's doing something that you're good at and you do love, but then you are pushed into an area of that field that you don't love so much. And that was certainly my experience. I started out a communication consultancy doing internal communication, which I loved, but then I allowed myself to be drawn into more of the kind of the writing, the speech writing, or all of the nitty gritty parts, which I didn't love so much. And then I ended up just saying yes to everything. It was very successful on my bank account, but yeah, 8 years in, I was burning out. So it was then time to extract, and I actually found business coaching and loved that aspect of it. But it is hard to sometimes you think, no, just give it to me and I'll do it for you.
Exactly. That was my problem. You cannot be a successful person if you are just going to default to doing it all. That comes with parenting, in a marriage, any sort of partnership in your business. You can't. You have to delegate and trust the process. People are going to screw up. They're going to fail. But as a leader, it's your responsibility to show up and guide them. Show them what the vision is and say, I need you to go from here to there. And then I'm going to support you, but you got to do the work. That's why you're here. And I was not the best at that.
So let's go to those moments where, things are working and then suddenly they weren't. How did you get through those moments? Was there something that you did or anything that challenged your mindset and you thought, no, this is what's going to see me through?
So the reality is that things break all the time. They don't stop breaking. And if you can accept those moments that are really freaking hard as an opportunity to just grow a bigger muscle, you will become better at dealing with these situations. Here's a perfect example that kind of relates. We just came back from 2.5 weeks in Croatia. The time zone difference is 9 hours from where we live. For an adult, that's hard to adjust, but I flew solo red eye with my 2 children that are 9 and 10 years old, all by myself. And let me tell you, the days leading up to it, I thought of all the worst case scenarios that never came to fruition. I stressed myself out and nothing happened. Everything was smooth, no delays. Our luggage arrived. The kids were brilliant. So I sat there in my seat thinking, wow, I was thinking the worst case scenario in all of this. And this actually ended up being a lovely experience. And then coming home, it was tough too. But in those moments, I was like, what am I doing? Why don't I just wait for my husband in Boston and we all fly together? Now, I guarantee you, if I had to go do a flight like this with my kids again, breeze. I know what to expect. There will be nothing to worry about because I've already lived it. So when you live through these moments that are really, really tough, you can face them. I mean, if you are intentional about coming out of it better off than you were when you first went into it, you can face these moments over and over again. You want a quick fix, boom, boom. Nope, doesn't happen like that. So in those moments of like facing with, employees leaving or being sued or just stuff that happens, the thing that got me through it is to have a direct line to 1 or 2 other women that have already been through all this before. So I had my friend Diana. If I'm at like a level 5 business, she's probably a 12. She'd already been through all this before. I got the luxury of texting her and calling her saying, here's what happened. What do I do? I'm crying. And she would always give me the time of day. I also have the benefit of being married to a successful entrepreneur who's also been through this all the time. He's guided me. Beyond those connections, it is absolutely getting your body moving. When you can get the heart pumping, the blood flowing, for me, it was CrossFit because I could be really angry and I could push my body to the limits. Movement was the motivation. It was the healing power that I needed. And whatever that is for you, it could be yoga, Pilates, whatever, going for a walk. It doesn't matter. But really it was the talk therapy and the movement and knowing that it's not going to be fixed tomorrow. And I still get like little bouts of PTSD from those moments from years ago, which is normal. But you have to talk about it. You have to be healthy, body, mind, spirit. You have to be constantly personally developing. So personal development isn't a 1 weekend course. It's a lifetime journey. You constantly have to be working on yourself, evolving, learning, tweaking, implementing, integrating. This is my year. 2023 is a year of implementation. Last year, I signed up for every program course possible to kind of help me understand where I needed to put my energy. And now I know in this business. So this year, I'm implementing everything I've learned. I didn't sign up for any programs or courses. Nope, I have my people and I know what I need to do. So it's the year of implementation.
Yeah, I love that. And as you say, this self-care, self-compassion, self-development, it's so important to keep you grounded in the right place. And when you have these things, so you don't take it personally and beat yourself up. Oh, I'm so stupid for getting myself into this fix. As you said, half the time it's not your fault. There's nothing you could do about this, but you still need to get through those moments. So I love your advice there. And I turn to someone else who's been through that experience. I talk in my book about creating a success circle, just a small number of people who get where you are, who believe in your vision and your passion, and who are there for you, and you're there for them as well. And it could just be one other person, but have those people that you can turn to, so you're never quite alone in these moments. And even when it comes to celebrating, celebrating with my husband, for example, is one thing, but celebrating with someone who gets the hard work that's gone behind making something happen is something else altogether. And yeah, that fitness, again, that self-care aspect, so important. Thanks for that advice. I think it's so important, but also I think the bumps and bruises you get along the way are what make you an entrepreneur. There is no such thing, as you say, as sailing through. And if you're going to grow, you're going to scale your business, you're going to pivot, do something differently, the more bumps and bruises you get at the beginning, the more you believe, well, that's okay, I can handle anything that comes up. And you build this CEO mindset and confidence as well.
Yeah. And when you get past these moments of failure or hardship, you think, phew, okay, now I'm good. but the next thing is going to show up. It could be big, it could be small, it could be medium. And then it's going to show up again. And so I don't know a successful entrepreneur that hasn't been through the ringer. But when you get through these things, if you allow yourself to just be like, that sucked. Okay, on to the next. Let's do it. Let's go. Because here's the thing, as an entrepreneur, especially women, is we don't see ourselves as valuable as we really are. And to not show up in your full power, despite what happened last night or last week, you're doing your people a disservice. And your people is your company, your clients, the people that are following you, the people that you inspire you. I can't tell you how many times I get messages when I share those deep, dark secrets on Instagram. People are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know someone like you would go through that. How could you go through that? So it's comforting to know that they're not alone. But you have to also show that you're getting through it.
Yeah. And then we were talking before we came on, that's the entire purpose of this podcast, or why I got it started, was to show the realities of running a business and that no one has it easy. We all have these moments where we think, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here.
I wake up every day. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. No.
But we get through that, we learn, we put in our systems, we figure out what works for us, what allows us to stand in that power and bring the best of ourselves out for other people. And it's a process. You say it doesn't just instantly happen. We have to build that muscle of really appreciating ourselves and continuing to have that courage to move forward, help other people, and have that amazing impact that we know we can have.
Yeah. 100%. And to segue into PR, this also relates to PR when you're pitching, because I will say one thing is it can be soul crushing sometimes when you have this big, beautiful media list and you're pitching and people are saying, no, there's no replies, they're not a good fit, not now, or there's no response whatsoever. But the more you do it, the more you realize, okay, it's a numbers game. Obviously, it's a quality game. It's a timing game as well. But the more that you are faced with no's, the more that you get used to the rejection. And it's really like, just don't take it personally. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into PR. For someone out there who perhaps doesn't really understand PR, let's give them just a quick overview of what it is and why it can be really powerful for small businesses.
Yeah. So I think the statistics still stand that PR is still the most trusted form of marketing and representation for a brand, an influencer company, because it's earned. So it's almost like the earned media component is, I've done something great and notable. Now people are going to talk about it. So it differs from advertising because anybody can advertise. Doesn't matter how good or bad your service is. Anybody can throw up an ad, throw some money behind it. PR indicates, for the most part, somebody or some company or something that's done something notable. And now I know people are probably thinking, oh, well, I'm not that person. I don't have something that's notable. We all have a story inside of us. We all have a reason for starting our business, a reason for growing our businesses or doing what we do. So we all have the potential to being successful when it comes to PR. And so I think PR is the mother of all marketing. It's the umbrella. Everything else sits below it. And why is because it's all about relationship building. You're building relationships with your prospects, your potential customers. That's the whole point. And this being the most trusted form of marketing, it's a win for everybody. And the reality is you can do it yourself and it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah. For people thinking, well, it's just little old me. I haven't done anything big or wild or notable. Where can people start? If that's where they are right now, how can you find a story within your business that's worth pitching to the media?
Well, we probably already know something that we can talk about. It could be your startup story as to why you started the business, how you started it, the importance to the community. I mean, a lot of people think of PR as being on daytime television or being in big publications like Forbes or Times. It's as small as a local blog. Kelowna, where we are in British Columbia, has a very popular blog called Castanet. So it's kind of like the local news, which is really interesting. I don't know too many cities, like small cities, that have this. But if you can get mentioned on there, then you get exposure to the entire Okanagan Valley, which is like hundreds of thousands of people. And people love to support local. So if you own a brick and mortar store, maybe you sell books, maybe you have an online business, you still have so much opportunity to pitch the media your story. Outside of that, though, I do have to say that it does have to be newsworthy. And newsworthy could mean something, maybe like 1% of your profits you give back to a local charity, or that you do some sort of like food drive or something during the holidays. There has to be a hook. You create it, you make it up. Like right now, we're going through our entire marketing plan for the rest of the year. Our goal is to grow our email list and to get on more podcasts to talk about this. But what's the hook? What the hook for me in reaching out to you was like, hey, I noticed you haven't talked about PR lately. Maybe I can jump in and say a few words. Perfect. You're like, absolutely. We haven't talked about PR for a while. You're a good fit. Let's get you on the show. But for me, it's like growing the email list. So what do I got to do? But we're creating these challenges. So in September, we're creating a challenge. We have to have a reason for people to want to show up. So you have to have a reason for people to want to talk about you. Everybody has the story in them. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be like, I just raised $20 million. That's great if you did. But if you didn't, what's the story? The story is all the bras that we don't sell at our lingerie line, we donate to Mamas for Mamas to help women in need to have nice new lingerie or whatever. There's something that we all do that is important. And we do all have something in us that's newsworthy.
Yeah. And I guess coming back to this idea we said earlier about having a success circle, people around you who get what you do, these could potentially be people that you can say, what do you see in me that's interesting?
Totally.
Because often we don't see it for ourselves. Are there any other ways or tried and tested techniques we can use to help us find those interesting stories?
Yeah, well, it's also dependent on the outlet, right? So for you, the pitch wasn't the fact that I had 2 babies in the same year I started an agency, although that probably could have worked. But I realized that the gap in the content was PR. So this is perfect. I'd love to suggest that we talk about PR. And so other shows or media could be like, there's a gap that I know the audience wants to hear about. So maybe it is the fact that I started a business, I grew it to $1 million. People are like, how'd you do it? Break it down for me. Perfect. So then I get interviewed. This is how we did it. My husband became the CFO of the household. I became the CEO of the household. We had our roles. We had our systems in place. We applied business-like philosophies to our family life, which allowed us to grow our businesses. People are like, oh, explain that to me. That was relevant. And there could be other things like we moved across the country in the middle of the pandemic and there were hardly any services available because we were locked in our house. People are like, why'd you do that? That was stupid. Turns out a lot of people moved across the country during the pandemic. So you have to think outside the box. It's not just about like, here's the marker that I sell and it's pink and it works great. It doesn't go through the paper. So no, that's not the story. The story is maybe one day you accidentally washed your favorite marker in your pants and it got all over the washing machine and all of your clothes got dyed pink. Your wedding dress got dyed pink. I don't know, whatever the story is, that's why you created the leak-proof pink marker and it's being used by the Kardashians. There's always the story. And like I said, if you don't have the story, you create the story because you don't want to waste your time pitching something that doesn't have something juicy. There's no hook. They can't sink their teeth into it. So spin it. Create something that is click-worthy, that people will open the email. And my one client, Janet, she has a 7-step framework to keep consistent with your nutrition and workouts throughout the summer. And it's simple because her whole argument is the personal training industry was the industry that created the belief that in order to be fit and healthy, you had to work out for an hour. That's just not the truth. And quite frankly, it could be dangerous. The truth is, as long as you accumulate something like a certain amount of hours of active, intentional movement a week, you will maintain your health. And that could be a 10-minute walk. It could be 20 air squats between phone calls and maybe 10 push-ups later on. Being intentional by that, complemented with nutrition, actually keeps you healthy. So she has this framework, and that was great. That was the hook we needed to get her in 2-page print spread in a magazine. Like that's the ultimate win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that idea of looking for the story behind the reasons you do things or the things that you do. And very often, the very reason we started our business, we had an idea, we had a philosophy that was different. We saw a gap. And that's why we jumped in. But that's the story. So your founder story very likely has some interesting hooks in it already, I'm
The
sure.
founder story, the product service story. A lot of people stop at the idea that, oh, there's just so many competitors or other people doing this. That's great. How do you do it different? And that is super important.
Mm.
How is it that you make the best 1 gallon water bottle? Tell me that. I'm holding it now. Is that a gallon? I don't know, 4 liters. How is this the best? Well, it's the best one because unlike other water bottles, we actually put the time and a motivational message next to how much you should drink by what time. Yes, there are millions of water bottles, but this company, that's what they did. And it started a movement. Now I see copycats, but they've not only crushed the design, the motivation, the idea behind it. Now they've created such great distribution that they're just ahead of the game. Why do they need that? Probably something like the founder didn't drink enough water. They had too many water glasses all over. And by the end of the day, they realized they had maybe 8 ounces of water all day. So they needed a solution to this problem. They created the water bottle. Brilliant. Media would love to talk about that.
Absolutely. So you found a great story with a hook, you've pitched it, and you're in the press. What does that do for a company? Why is that worth pursuing?
Yeah. So one thing I will say is you can't always directly correlate media wins to sales. What it does, it increases exposure, increases awareness, credibility. You know, when you go to a website and you're like, as seen in Times or Forbes, it instantly, like your mind subconsciously is saying, oh, well, that means they're great. Like now they're validated because the media has mentioned them. And sometimes it could be like they were quoted, they were unlinked, quoted at the bottom of an article. Yet still they'll put that they've been featured in one of those publications. If you're doing it right or you're working with a good publicist or PR company, is they look at the long tail approach to what PR can do. For instance, there are some clients that come to me, they're like, we want to raise a round or maybe a seed round or a series A by this time next year. Our goal is to get in front of those potential investors or decision makers. And I think there's a way of doing it using PR. Right. So they put the end goal. Some people are like, well, obviously we're launching a product in the next 6 months. So we need to leverage PR to help us gain exposure for this product because we want people to buy it. Right. It could get in front of influencers somehow. And all of a sudden the Kardashians, just because I said them, are linking to your product. So definitely would boost an increase in sales. So yes, there is sales connected to PR. But really, it's about the credibility, the awareness, the authority, right? So then you get asked to be on more podcasts, you get asked to speak on stages. By way, your snowball grows and grows, then it should help you grow your business.
Yeah, it's really the ultimate way to leverage other people's audiences, and media outlets build huge audiences. So it's a great way to build everything you just said. So how is there a moment where it's too soon for a company to invest in PR and put the time into that, or too late, or does it work just for anybody?
No, I always say start now, and start now, not by, oh, I just have a business idea and I'm going to start pitching the media, even though you don't have a product or service. The whole idea is there's a process behind this too. And most people don't understand the timing that's involved. Lead times is huge. Like for podcasts, sometimes when I'm pitching for clients, these shows that accept them to be as guest aren't recording new episodes for 3 or 4 months. And then there's a 6-month window before that episode goes live. So you're looking at a year. And lead times for print publications, they could be 3 months, could be longer than that. Right now, guess what's happening? All of the journalists, they're starting to source Christmas time gift guide products, right? And you know what happens before Christmas? All the Valentine's Day stuff comes out. And so I always say if PR is part of your process to increase your exposure for your business, always look at it from a minimum of 6 months time point, because you need to start at least 6 months. That's not only developing strategy, but creating your media list, developing relationships with contacts, with podcast hosts, whatever it is you need to do. It takes time. You can't just rock up one day, throw out a couple emails and pitch people. It might work, it might not work, but you need that time to prepare. You need the time to tweak too. And like when you do start pitching, never start with the biggest ones. Never start with the tier one media. Start with the lower hanging fruit. And no disrespect to the lower hanging fruit, but start with the smaller publications, the smaller podcasts, because it gives you a chance to practice your pitch as well as practice your talk if you are showing up on a show. Because some people, they just stutter and they're like, oh, I meant to say this, or I wrote this. I don't know. I'm like, oh, no, you practice. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Then you start to see, oh, the thing that I thought was the good thing, the juiciness that I wanted to talk about, I realize most hosts want to talk about this thing. So I'm just going to go in and dive deep on just this. So you need to be practicing. And PR is a quantity game. So the last time I checked, I call it my win rate. It's one of my biggest data points because people always ask me when they want to hire me, what results can you guarantee? There is a public relations association in America that pretty much says, according to their standards, it is illegal. There's no law about this, but it's illegal to promise results because when it comes to PR, there are so many variables. There is the pitch. Was it good? Journalist, they said yes. The journalist then has to take to the editor. The editor has to then decide if it's going to fit into anything. And then while even the editor might say yes, the story could get bumped. So there's no guarantee. So know that. So it's a quantity game. So coming back to my win rate, it's about 18 to 20%. So 18 to 20% of my pitches will turn into a yes. So knowing this, if someone shows up and says, Renee, my goal is to be on, 100 relevant podcasts, then I know how much I have to pitch. Geez, my eyes cross even just thinking about that. But I know it. And then we obviously have all of our systems internally. So all that stuff happens a lot faster. But I don't want to discourage anybody now who's listening into this that they can't do their own PR. They can't. I have a lot of free resources on my website, actually one that we talked about. If you go to wewildwomen.com, proven-pitch-strategies, so proven pitch strategies, there's a free download. I teach you basic framework outline on how to actually start pitching. And I actually have pretty great content on our blog too. And I talk about stuff on Instagram. The how to do PR is out there. It's free. You can figure it out. The problem that I see 99% of the time, people give up after 2 weeks. So if you're listening to this, I want you to promise me one thing. If this is something that you are going to do, give yourself 3 months. 3 months of pitch and follow up, because you'll start to see that momentum and the traction eventually happening, and it becomes addicting. It becomes addicting because you're getting those yeses, but you need those 3 months.
Yeah. And I like your idea of starting with the kind of the low hanging fruit, the local blogs, the smaller newspapers. And what I also like about that one, it's very doable and they're much more likely to say yes. But when they do say yes, then you're like, I did it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
It builds your kind of media confidence ready for that next level. And I think podcasting is quite an interesting media because it's a little bit different because it talks back. You don't have an article you've written. They will ask you questions. And as you say, you'll start to see trends as to what are the questions that people are most interested in. And often it's probably not what you've prepared. So I'm imagining that you could use that as part of your PR strategy to develop even stronger pitches ready for those bigger magazines. Is that how it works?
Totally. And what I do with my clients in the VIP day is we come up with a Google Doc of a list of questions, and there's 3 categories: life, business, and questions about the product or service that they're talking about. And so oftentimes in podcasts, the host asks for like, what are some questions we can ask you? Well, if you've already prepared this, not only prepare the questions that you want them to ask, but actually go through these questions with somebody on your team or a family member where they sit there and they ask you these questions. Then when you show up for the show, you're not only more confident, but you're able to share some really good stuff. And that's what hosts want for their audience. And that's what the audience shows up for. So the more you can be prepared, the better it is for everybody. And here's the thing. I think it was Oprah that said this. Maybe not. But somebody famous once said something like this, I'm paraphrasing, that being nervous is a good sign that you care, but being nervous to the point where you don't show up to your full potential is the most selfish thing you can do. Because I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. I'm here for your audience. And your audience hopefully Somebody got a nugget from something that we talked about now, and they're going to go and be successful. So that's my job, is to be as valuable as I can be. And by not showing up the way that I do, I'm doing these people a disservice.
Yeah, preparation has got to be key. And I really like that quote. I haven't heard that before, but as soon as you said it, it's like, yeah. So if someone does want to do their own PR, they find a story, they've got that hook, they've downloaded your resource, so they know how to pitch it. Who do you pitch it to? How do you discover where to send these pitches?
Yeah, that's the hard part. I want to say that's almost the hardest part. I have somebody on my team that works 20 hours a week dedicated to only building out media lists for us, for clients. So it's a grind. And the big thing that's happened in the industry, because before we pressed record, we talked about the changes in the industry, is as of the last 6 months to a year, there's been some of the top publications, the top media companies have laid off all of their staff writers. National Geographic announced yesterday or the day before that they just laid off their last staff writer. So that means that these publications were much easier, quote, easier to find. The people that write articles for these publications are now freelance writers. So they're not just writing for National Geographic. Now it's National Geographic and Times and the Inquirer, you name it, wherever they can get content contracts. So finding these people is harder. The way that I see it is I say, write down your wish list. What is your wish list for the publications and podcasts you want to be on? Choose 10. Take those 10, put it to the bottom of your media list because you ain't pitching those people. And you go online and you find a tier 2 equivalent to those podcasts and the media. And all you got to do is you got to show up to a website. I'm going to use this as an example because I have a client right now. I'm building out her media list. She's a hormone specialist. So one of her keywords is hormones, female hormones, women hormones. So we go to Women's Day magazine, and then we would just put in those keywords in the search bar, hormones. And then it pulls up all the articles that mention hormones. Then you look at who wrote the article. Now you have to make sure that the contact has written something about that topic within the last 6 months to a year, because they move around, So you go to the website, you find out who's written articles within the industry, you find out their contact information. There's a ton of free resources and how you find somebody's contact information. There's snove.io. It's a Google Chrome extension, hunter.io. They allow for up to 30 free searches a month. There's Rocket Reach, also free for a handful of searches, where you can put in someone's information and it'll pull up email addresses. You can find out where these people are, and then you pitch them. There's also a formula about when to follow up, how to follow up, and all that stuff I teach and do for you inside some of my programs. Don't let that discourage you. Right now, just go out, craft the pitch, find somebody to pitch and do it. Don't be scared. Just send it.
And how much personalization, if you have an article or a story, do you need to personalize that for each publication? Or can you just have one thing and just send it out?
No. Oh my gosh. That is the worst thing in PR. Never mass email a list. So that's why PR takes so long. I actually published a reel a couple of days ago about this because I get the question, why is it taking so long, Renee? I go, I'm not only finding these people, but every single email that I pitch is custom to that person. Now, we have generic templates that we use. So we go through the process of creating all of these different types of pitches and the follow-up emails and all this stuff. We throw them into Google Templates so that you can open up a draft email. Then the top of it is always personalized. Hey, Melitta, I saw that you just had Renee on your show. Absolutely love the thing that she said about blah, 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 blah. Love your show. Super good. And then you just put in the stuff that they need to know what to make the decision. And there's no attachments. There's typically 1 or 2 links, link to the website, oftentimes link to your most active social media account, and that's it. And here's the thing, 3 paragraphs tops, 250 words, bullet points, and bold. And every single email needs to have a call to action. I've been pitched incredible people to be on my show, but there was never a question. I'm like, great, this person sounds great, but what do you want? The idea is, well, we wanted her to be a guest on your show. Well, thanks. Thanks for asking. And all you have to do at the bottom I do in bold letters. Can I connect you with Melitta today to be a guest on your podcast? Boom. That's it. Yes or no, or not now, or maybe. So it needs to be clean, tight, succinct, no attachments, killer subject line. Now, one client of mine, Amber, she launched a book earlier this month. We went through 20 different pitches and 50 different subject lines to finally land on the one that got so many clicks. We're like, this is it. Amber is still the same person. She still accomplished the same things, but now people are opening these emails because the subject line was great and so was the pitch. It's an art. It's really an art, and I love doing it. I love doing it.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think if you start a podcast and you get pitched, then you'll start to learn how not to do a pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So many weird and wonderful ones, you know, and you say, why are you sending me this information? But keep it simple is definitely the way to go, because I get dozens of pitches every single week, and it's a lot to go through. And so if they're too long, I don't even bother.
Exactly. I have a folder on my Gmail called bad pitches, and it's bigger than any other folder that I have, unfortunately. And there's so many times I cringe. I just want to reply saying, can I offer to fix your pitch? Most of the times it's from a publicist or an agency. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is terrible. I could go on about this forever.
It's great that this really is your passion. So that's wonderful for sharing that with us. So we are creating a list. We are putting the media we really want to feature on at the bottom. We're starting with the lower tier so we can practice, we can see what works and build that confidence. We are personalizing everything, doing the research properly. And when I learned PR, this was back in 96 or so. But one of the things that we used to do was to look at a publication and go through and look at the type of pictures, the kind of headlines they would use, the sort of adverts they were attracting, and picking up all these clues. Does it work the same way with an online publication? Because I guess the adverts aren't necessarily coming from that organization. They maybe come from like Google ads. So
yeah, that's true.
Can you still pick up clues that way?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. Yes. And what Melitta is alluding to is that there's so much incredible software for advertisers out now that they just open up real estate on their website to have advertising softwares deploy ads, not dependent on the actual publication, but dependent on the user because they've been cookied. It's a big, long story. Anyway, I would look at headlines. I would look at comments. I would look at questions. I would look at who's sharing this stuff too, to get an idea of the content.
Yeah. And that will help with the personalization. Then we're going to stay in the game, be patient, follow up, keep at it for 3 months, and see where we get to from there. Is there anything else, if someone wants to DIY this themselves, anything else key in that process that they need to know?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, but the biggest thing is just keep showing up. Here's the trick. People are like, how do I do this? When do I schedule this in? The best way to start is to pitch at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, pitch your 10 contacts for the week. And then on the Wednesday morning, follow up with people you pitched 2 weeks ago. That is just a very generic cadence that works because then it forces you to schedule the time into your calendar to pitch. And, in the other loose end of your week, you're building out your media list. You're sourcing connections. You're connecting with people on Twitter. Journalists love Twitter. Maybe some have changed because they don't like Elon. And there's so much involved in that. But if you can just do the 10-10 rule, 10 Tuesday, 10 Wednesday, you'll start to get into this flow because now it's part of your weekly systems. That is a very secret but awesome key.
Fabulous. Thank you. And if someone is listening and thinks, okay, PR sounds like it's a brilliant strategy, but I by no means have the energy or the inclination to do it for myself, how do you go about finding the right PR agency for you? Are there any key things to look for?
Yeah. The most important thing is values. I've been pitched so many times to represent companies or people of which I just can't see eye to eye. I mean, it doesn't help that I'm a 6 foot tall woman either, as a joke. But if I don't believe in their mission and we don't have those same values, it's so hard to pitch. And it goes the other way too. So that's why it's like, I don't know, for the most part, I've seen like the really like rah masculine real estate folk have like the rah masculine publicist or agency on their side because they can match that energy. And it's about picking up the phone. It's about jumping on Zoom and interviewing them, because the thing about PR, it becomes very personal. Like I start to learn and know things about clients that probably some people on their team wouldn't even know, because it's all part of that process. And then in terms of like cost, well, you're looking at anywhere from like $2,000, maybe $1,500 a month upwards to $30,000 a month. And the sky's the limit when it comes to PR. When I had my agency, we had packages that were like $30,000 a month. We had a whole team behind it. And I don't want to say it's an expensive investment. If you find the right partner and they see the vision, they will help you cross that finish line.
Yeah. Interesting. So give it the time, as you say, give it that space to build your skills, see what works, and yeah, get out there and enjoy the benefits.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Renee, thank you so much for joining us today. We have covered so much, but is there anything that we've missed?
A lot, but I say if you want to learn more, you can follow me on Instagram, Renee_Warren, or you can find me on my website, wewildwomen.com.
Fantastic. I was about to ask, where can people find you? So you've already answered that question. Brilliant. Renee, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.